Folks, it's Monday night. You're watching Sasquatch Experience tonight, episode 83, 50 Years of High Strangeness. We're going to talk about the UFO Bigfoot flap of 1973. It's going to be a great show. Stick around. We'll be right back.
The views and opinions expressed by the guests of Sasquatch Experience do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the hosts, sponsors, or affiliates of the Sasquatch Experience. As always, listener discretion is advised.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Does a legend walk among us, lurking in the forests of our world?
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my sensor light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man or something. Looks like a man. I don't know what it was.
For over 15 years, we've talked with scientists, researchers, investigators, and witnesses, trying to gain insight and proof around the existence of this mysterious entity.
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Dia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Okay, hang on.
He's right...
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
Join us as we continue into the investigation of the Sasquatch Experience. And welcome to tonight's show, folks. Sasquatch Experience. Sean Forker, James Baker, Matt Arner, Henry May, and Vance Nesbitt down there in the bottom corner. It's like Hollywood Squares, but it's not a square. It's just some strange shape that we happen to be occupying. But welcome to tonight's show, guys. Yes, you've got us back-to-back weeks because we just love you so much. But guys, this show, and I hope you all had a great weekend. I know we chatted, Matt, you were sick, and Baker, you've had some stress going on. I'm glad you guys are both with us tonight and feeling good. Henry, you got some monster storms rolling through there, so I know you're trying your best to stick it with us. And Vance and I are just two boring old guys who have been
Pretty much.
Yep. So you guys have all that fun stuff. It's just Vance and I doing our normal thing. Ain't nothing but a thing, right?
Right.
But this show started. Matt Knapp, a good friend of mine, partner of mine, over at Bigfoot Crossroads. Very interesting episode. We talked about the mysteries of the Chestnut Ridge last week. He asked me to come on and be a guest with him. Him and I always have good dialogue together, so it was, much appreciated and a lot of fun. But as we were talking, I just came to the revelation, and I can't talk tonight, that it's been 50 years since the 1973 UFO flap in Westmoreland County. And actually, we call it the Westmoreland County clap.
It is the clap.
It incorporated a lot more than just Westmoreland County. There's actually quite a few places, but interesting nonetheless. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts on this going into this show tonight. I don't care who goes first. Baker, you were born in 73, so give us your thoughts.
Well, I don't remember a lot about that. A lot of incontinence and getting boob. It was a unique year. But I was reading a lot of articles on it, and I'll tell you what, just not just the UFO sightings. They were nationwide, and they were also across other countries. But there was a lot going on. Nixon had his troubles. There was the Yom Kippur War. I think I pronounced that badly, but with Israel and basically all the Arab nations around them, that could have ended with a nuclear response. There were so many sightings of different alien spacecrafts, and then there was also creatures. But, in some areas, like you were saying in Pennsylvania, it was starting to tie into the Bigfoot community. some of the major people that we talk about today really got their feet wet into that, where people started to know them as common names. One of them would be like Stan Gordon. I know there were a few other ones. A lot of them are unfortunately have passed on due to natural causes or just, because 50 years ago when they were 20, now they're 70,
That would be natural causes.
Yeah, right.
The one guy got hit by a drunk driver.
Yeah, well, that's not natural.
I did post the article in the chat, so if anybody wanted to follow along with it.
Well, thank you, Biggs.
No, that's incredible, actually. Bake, you're absolutely right. In 1973, there was a lot of strange things going on nationwide, not just focused in what was going on in Pennsylvania flap, but there were things going on nationwide. And I would bring up a couple of interesting points to just keep in the back of your mind that in some of these circumstances, it was described as a Bigfoot-like creature that was seen along with these UFOs. Now, with that said, the Patterson-Gimlin film had come out only 5 years prior to that. The Patterson-Gimlin film was only seen under public distribution through local media. So whether the news source or a television show decided to show that clip, those were the only people that saw it. So there were millions of Americans that did not see that footage and had really no idea of the concept of Bigfoot at that time, even 5 years after the fact. And I found that really interesting. And another interesting name to bring up, along with Stan Gordon, which, my heart, it's all to Stan Gordon. He's done such amazing and a plethora of work that, sir, I can't put it into words as to what that man has contributed to this entire topic. But Stanton Friedman took an interest in this whole 73 flap. And even though he was investigating the things that were going on in 1973 in Sacramento, California, and he was more focused on the UFO incidents that were happening at the time, Stan was looking more at the contribution of both things being tied together with each other, and if there was any kind of similarities or if there was an actual tie between both a hominid that walks our earth and UFOs. And I just wanted to put that out there, that again, millions of Americans were unfamiliar with seeing the actual Patterson-Gimlin film at the time, unless they saw it at a local library or whether their local television news happened to show a clip of it. But again, millions did not see it at that time. And we're talking 5 short years after or prior to that fact that this film was released, when this whole 73 flap happened.
Yeah. Matt, go ahead.
Going back into that particular era, we were also, we were in the Cold War. There was a lot of psyops that were going on between NATO and the Soviet Union. A lot of, I think, what the UFOs, some UFOs were attributed to, craft from, say, like the Skunk Works and from some other places. But, some of, just reading through what some of the accounts, I'm not a UFO person myself, but, it just seems that we just had this major influx of activity in that particular year, during that particular era. And again, having the Cold War going on plays a big factor into it, but there could be also other factors as well. The fact that we are using at that point a lot of nuclear energy, that could be, we're starting to send signals into space. it could have been something to trigger something, to come forward. But as for the Bigfoot phenomena tied into it, I'll go into my little theory a little later. But I think it is interesting.
No, you all brought up some really good points. I didn't come along till many years later, right? I wasn't even a thought at this point. My dad was still a chittle. And, but this is the stuff I was raised on, the 73 flap. It's as a Pennsylvania researcher, you come to terms that there's some strange shit that happens in this research. It's just unavoidable. These things interweave, and in that 70s was like the apex of that.
Right.
You've got John Green talking about it in Sasquatch: The Apes Among Us. You've got you got stuff going on all over the country: California, Mississippi, Indiana, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Cincinnati, Ohio. There's this confluence of UFO flaps, but why is Pennsylvania the only one notating the Bigfoot component of it? And I know there's folks listening tonight. They're gonna be like, "Oh, here we go. It's a UFO Bigfoot connection." But you can't. It's unavoidable. Like, we have to talk about this, mainly for historical preference, but also to the fact that it happened. It's been documented very well. And you talk about people that were part of this. You got Stan Gordon, who's been researching this now for over 50 years. You see some photos on there from Stan at the time. That photo you see with the three-toed print there. The one story I like to tell quite frequently about the Bigfoot ripping the electrical box off the back of the trailer, off the side of the trailer. That creature left three-toed footprints behind. So again, when you make the comment, Bigfoot-like creatures, Vance, that's part of it, right? And then we go back to what we talked about last week in Boggy Creek, right, with the three-toed prints. And then Matt brings up the point, well, maybe it's not three-toe, maybe it's just how it walks. So, there's a lot of connection points. But Stan Gordon wasn't the only person to be investigating some of these. There was also a man by the name of Dr. Paul Johnson, who also investigated UFO activity in Pennsylvania, Bigfoot activity. Dr. Paul's a great dude. I got to know him over the years. I'm acquainted. I don't want to say we're biffs. We're not going out for breakfast or anything like that, but he's a good guy. But doesn't get nearly the credit because he's not out there like Stan Gordon is. He wrote the book Chasing the Elusive Pennsylvania Bigfoot. For anybody who wants to pick up a really good read, you can get that on Amazon, which, part of that book was written with Joan Jeffers. And I was talking to Henry before we came online. Joan was, part of the Pennsylvania UFO Research Center at that time. So she was one of the people that were taking these calls and doing these investigations. She's not with us any longer. I had one picture of Joan, and I can't find it on this computer. I just got this computer, but I couldn't find it in any of my files. And when I went to do a Google search tonight, I couldn't find anything about Joan Jeffers. So it kind of breaks my heart a little bit that, just aside from some footnotes, she's not talked about. And I told Henry, like, I really want to get with Lauren Coleman and maybe Heather Moser, somebody that could help me do the research to really tell Joan's story, because I just have this like connection with her. I don't know what it is, why I'm drawn to her, but I feel like she has a story that needs to be told. And it's important to this because, she was part of it, and she's just someone that just goes uncredited. And it bothers me a little bit. Because we're all important, and when you take the time and you contribute to this, everybody should be recognized for their contributions. And she had a hell of a lot of contribution to this.
I agree.
So,
right.
Well, let's get to it, guys. So pull up my notes here. But so this really started, according to various sources. December 1972, residents of Greensburg reported seeing a hairy bipedal creature chasing their neighbor's two dogs in the middle of the day. The following month, glowing spheres of pure white light were reported hovering in the sky, from which shards of luminous material fell towards the ground. Now, Stan and his team recovered some of this material, and my understanding of it, let's see where I put that article, because I did collect the article. It did come back with some Oh, shit. I hate when that happens. I'll find it. We'll talk about it again in a little bit. But he did take it and have some of it analyzed and had some pretty interesting results. It was 95% of the material was plain old aluminum. 5% of it couldn't be identified. So there was 5% of the material taken from that luminous UFO or that luminous object that couldn't be identified, which is pretty interesting. I wonder if we ran that material today, what that would come back. Maybe that our advances in science could identify what that material could be, Matt.
Well, I mean, you look at the periodic. I'm a child of the 70s. I remember our periodic tables of the elements were like, only like this, this big. Now it's a lot more. So there's always a great possibility that we do, we may have something that, can match that unknown property for the metallurgy. So,
yeah. So, I mean, it's something to look into and perhaps maybe find an answer to that, guys. I don't know. Vance, what were you
But the same similar incident happened with the Roswell also. There were materials that were analyzed that were not identified at that time. I find that kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, but if we still had access to those materials, it's something we could test today. And what would the results be, Go ahead, James.
The fact that you bring up Roswell is kind of important to the whole thing, because the article I read was because of some of the other things that were going on around the world, like the Israeli war and a few other we were actually gearing up to get involved in that. And we were actually at the Wright-Patterson base, which is where they're actually assessed that the Roswell ship in Area 51 is based. And so they're saying that some of the article states kind of gives you the idea that the reason that we had so much of new activity is the fact that because there was so much going on in an area near a supposed vehicle, that the people that created the vehicle were kind of like, okay, they're moving around it a lot. Maybe we should start doing stuff. And that's why they were more visible and more working,
Sure. We have Henry back here with us. So let's give Henry a minute to say something before we lose him again. Henry, 73 Bigfoot. What's on your mind?
Well, Gene said best. He said it does. Damn it.
We lost him. All right. We'll have to bring him
Sorry,
back.
Henry.
Henry. He's got bad weather going on, folks, and coupled with always challenged with his connection. So we're going to try to get that straightened out. Henry, sorry, buddy. Didn't mean to lose you there. But interesting enough, guys, when I was going into this, I went and did some research into some Pennsylvania resources on sightings that were happening. Okay. And there were some instances before December 1972 in the Fayette County area, which I really feel may have actually precipitated the flap. And I think they should be included only because they happened at the end of October as it starts rolling into December and November. So October 31st, 1972, Drummondville, several witnesses in a car saw a gray-haired bipedal creature with long arms, short legs, self-illuminated eyes. And the creature looked into the back window of the car. And then in November 1972, several kids threw stones at a 5.5 to 6 foot tall creature that growled at them. So dumb kids throwing rocks at big feet, and surprised one of them didn't get eaten. But so those kind of events happened. And then, of course, there's the 1972 incidents. But then this is where it gets really interesting, because in January 1973, residents of Greensburg reported seeing a hairy bipedal creature chasing their neighbor's 2 dogs in the middle of the day, kind of like that they were talking about there earlier, right? When the Bigfoot was confronted, it fled into the woods, which bordered the back of the homeowner's property. The Bigfoot had a lopping gait, and its fur was brown and covered its whole body, save for its ape-like face. Those present also reported a rotten egg smell, and that's when you start getting some of the smells notated with some of these creatures. Now, for the rest of January into February, grisly evidence of Bigfoots or some other immensely powerful animal mounted. Chickens were killed, Their coops have been violently ripped apart. A few families woke up to find their dogs dead in their yard with their spines broken. Yeah, pretty terrible. Many of these fatal attacks occurred in and around Pottstown in Montgomery County, which is on the other side of the state. So as we start talking about this becoming more than just a localized situation, we call it the Westmoreland County Bigfoot Flap. I mean, it expands out quite a bit into many counties. And that's what, Matt, how many miles? Is it about 174 maybe from?
Oh, way more than that.
Yeah.
Because I think Interstate 80's, 300 miles, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
And so, I mean, you're talking one side of the state, in Pottstown, you're not that far from Philadelphia. So
I just Googled it here quick. Let's find out. It is 258 miles, Matt.
Okay.
Well, it's over 200 miles.
Yep.
It takes me 91 miles to get to Scranton. So that seems about right. So you're talking about 259, 260 miles across the state. You have other things happening. And, that part of the state also has its UFOs. Southeastern PA has probably just as many sightings of UFOs as southwestern PA. And I just wonder why there's not as many creature sightings that happened, in negotiation with that. Maybe it's just because at that point in time, there wasn't anybody there to talk about it. And that's something else to think about. You have Stan Gordon, who's out there, who's now known by the state police as having a hotline and as a resource to report these too. The police are getting so inundated with these sighting reports. They're reaching out to Stan to help them meter that out. Matt, what's that say as a member of law enforcement? How does that, what's that say to you?
Well, you know what? They have a trust in Stan that they know that when they send somebody that went through an experience like that to someone like Stan Gordon, he's going to be someone that's going to be as good with interviewing and treating the person that's giving the report as they would. So for one of us to send somebody to a person like that, we really have to have a high regard for them. And we have to know that they're not going to be, just, some guy that has a hotline. Stan really established a great relationship with the state police. And they probably saw the way that he interviewed, some of these witnesses. And if it's, doing it, as they would, all the power to him to have him take those reports.
Right. And with that said, Matt, which is a very good point, Stan Gordon was just relaying the information that he took in. And the way that he took that information in was in a chronological order, and that's how the state police took a look at it.
Yes.
Okay, all he is he's the sounding board for these incidents. I would also interject one other really kind of interesting point. It was in 1973 when then Governor of Georgia, Jimmy Carter, reported his UFO experience.
Wow.
With that said, we'll let that go forward.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
And my condolences to Mr. Carter because his wife just passed.
Yeah, very sad.
Yes, very much so. That's why I brought it up, was for that condolence.
And on that note, we're going to jump into our bid show break here, folks. It's almost that 9:25, guys. If you can believe that. Stick around, guys. We'll be right back. We're going to regroup, continue on our discussion of the UFO Bigfoot Flap, 50 years of high strangeness. We'll catch you after this.
News team, assemble!
Yes, it is Monday Night Live once again, right here on the Big Distraction, Bigfoot Bullhorn on the Sasquatch Experience. And we are quickly approaching the Turkey Week. We're only days away, folks. And if you're listening to this on the Turkey Day, well, enjoy. And of course, out by me, we have the annual Turkey Testicle Festival. No thank you. I will stay at home on that date. But let's kick things off here, staying in concert with what we are talking about tonight, the Big Muddy Monster of Southern Illinois. I know what you're thinking, the Big Muddy Monster. No, we're not talking about Michael Moore's undercarriage. Believe me, I've stood close to that guy. He smells bad. I'm not sure he knows that water can actually clean the human body, but I digress. Out of Murfreesboro, Southern Illinois, there are 2 dates in Murfreesboro that still leave some haunted or at least curious. 2 police reports dated June 25th and June 26th relate the sighting of an unknown creature. It was in those 2 evenings that the reports came out of a loud, tall, white-haired creature caked with mud being spotted in the woods on the outskirts of the town near Big Muddy River. It was later dubbed the Big Muddy Monster because of its indefinable features and mysterious presence. It set off a media frenzy after the initial reports on those 2 days said former patrolman and retired Murfreesboro Police Chief Ron Manwarning. Those are the most copied and most looked at reports in the history of the department, he said. Letters came streaming in from those as far away as California and New York wanting a piece of information or a piece of the prize. But that prize is still elusive. It is an unsolved case because I can't tell you what it was, he said. Having retired 18 years ago and having not seen the Big Muddy Monster police reports in years, Manwarning is still able to recount those haunting evenings as if they just happened yesterday. And he recounts the stories as if he were writing the police report all over again. There were numerous sightings and people interviewed. The first report came in just before midnight on June 25th. A couple had been parked near the boat dock on the southwestern edge of Riverside Park next to the woods. The 2 were not married, said that they were in a car, and when they heard very loud screaming sounds coming from the wooded area, and observed a large creature approximately 7 feet tall. The creature appeared to have light-colored hair that was matted with mud. The creature appeared to be walking on 2 legs and was proceeding towards his car, according to the report. Police searched the area with flashlights and spotted tracks in the mud, approximately 3 to 4 inches deep, 10 to 12 inches long, and 3 inches wide. While officers were searching the area, they reported hearing another scream coming from the woods, but nothing could be found. When we come back, the second report of the Big Muddy Monster.
You're listening to the Sasquatch Experience.
We take you back now to the auditions for Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Okay, people, today we're auditioning the part of Captain Picard. Please read the line in the script. The guy in the bow tie.
I'm Jean-Luc Picard, Captain of the Enterprise.
Thank you. You, sir. Next guy.
I am Jean-Luc Picard.
Thank you. Okay, you, sir. Bald guy.
I'm Jean-Luc Picard, Captain of the Enterprise.
Bald guy?
Yes?
Do you get airsick at warp speed?
Star Trek: The Next Generation. One hip starship. Weeknights at 7 on Channel 6.
File not found. Virus detected. Can't connect. Finally, your suffering is over.
We'll take it from here.
Thank you.
Introducing Geek Squad, 24-hour computer support task force. Call 1-800-GEEK SQUAD. Help has arrived.
Well, as mentioned at the top of this news break, that we were staying in concert with the subject matter in which we are speaking of tonight. These two reports of the Big Muddy Monster happened on June 25th and 26th of 1973. So the next report follows that the next morning after the first report, Officer Manwarning said he was the officer on duty when a call came in from the Westwood Hills subdivision that two teenagers were sitting on the back porch when they spotted a tall, white hair-covered creature in a field on the edge of the woods. Manwarning said officers responded, and while they were in the area, a neighbor said their 5-year-old son had just come in 10 minutes earlier saying he saw something on the edge of the woods. My partner and I decided to go down to the area where they said they saw this thing, Manwarning said. He started traveling a footpath through the bushes and noticed a stench and slimy film on the tree branches. I saw the substance and smelled the smell myself, he said. Now, Jerry Nellis, an officer with the Carbondale, Illinois Police Department at the time, was a dog handler and was called to the scene. The dog did track the scent all the way to a barn, but once it got to the barn, the dog refused to go inside. We never got a good view of any tracks, Nellis said. Is there a Sasquatch? I don't know, but it does make for a good story. Thanks again for listening to this edition of the Big Distraction Bigfoot Bullhorn exclusively on the Sasquatch Experience. And as always, remember, keep those toes in the mud.
Well, thanks, Vance, for the Bigfoot Bullhorn this week, the Muddy Monster.
If I could just interject, I was just so entranced by the new Bigfoot Bullhorn graphics.
Pretty cool.
I thought they were outstanding.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah,
You're welcome.
Sean did awesome with that.
That was all Vance and I discussing this morning about how we need to give some things a facelift here. We were talking about ourselves because, we're getting old and every time we fart, it smells like creamed corn. But
and you can't trust it.
You can't trust it. But
No,
as we age
you
gracefully, it's we also figured we'd update some of our graphics here. But folks, if you're just joining us, regrettably, you're listening to the Sasquatch Experience. I'm Sean Forker. That's Vance Nesbitt, James Baker's forehead, and Matt Arner down there in the bottom corner. We've been talking about the 1973 UFO flap. I think we're gonna stop calling it the Westmoreland County flap because we've discussed it's affected a lot more than that. It's hit Washington County. So we all know I love John Green, right? John Green, the prolific Bigfoot investigator, writer, wrote Sasquatch: The Apes Among Us, pretty much the best book written on the subject. Although Matt Pruitt may be giving him a run for his money, we could send a little shout out to our Matt Pruitt there. From June 1973 to February 18, 1974, the UFO group, which was Stan Gordon's group, documented 118 such sightings with 245 witnesses. 245. 91 reports were in Westmoreland County, 7 in Allegheny, 6 in Indiana, 5 each in Fayette and Washington counties, 3 in Beaver, and 1 in Somerset. Only about 30 of these sightings took place in daylight, while there were 24 at dusk and 30 in the vicinity of 10 and 11 p.m. 49 of the creatures were seen in wooded areas, but there were 19 near trailers and 18 near houses. Only 10 were seen on roads. So just kind of interesting is, he looked at these reports as they were coming in, Sasquatch Apes Among Us written around that time. So that's fresh material. And he went through and dived in and, did a little deep dive on that. And I think we've got Henry back. Henry, how you doing there, buddy?
I'm hanging in there. I wish my connection was.
So as we're talking, Henry, what's your thoughts on 73? You've heard some of the things going on. You're familiar with the material. What's Henry May thinking on this?
Hang on a second. Well, now John Green said it best. He said he didn't like to another mystery.
Right. He didn't like to explain a mystery with another mystery.
But the thing is, you can't deny what was going on, especially in Westmoreland County.
Right. It was a big deal, right? And it's documented, well documented. Overall, how do you think it impacted Bigfoot studies?
Well, I think it brought.
Gotta love it. Sorry, Henry. Sorry, folks. Just as we got Henry on a roll.
It's a weather thing.
It brought. Yeah, it's the weather. Like I said, it brought a new element into the studies of Sasquatch, in that we had something interesting and new and even controversial going on with the UFO flap.
When do you think it became controversial that these two subjects were starting to overlap? From the get-go, was there always some sort of hesitation or some sort of like alienation between the two groups that said you shall not commingle and share documentation, and these topics should not intertwine? Or did that come later on? Because that's a question I have. When did that become such a hotly debated, hotly divisive topic?
Sean, I think it really got divisive within the last 10 years, maybe with social media. I know from even with the old group, there was a lot of people that, had varying concepts of what a Bigfoot was. I'll use the word, there was people in the woo crowd and there's people in the ape crowd, and everyone, hey, we'd sit there, we'd have our discussions face to face, or at a conference or whatnot. And hey, you know what? We have difference of opinion, but we still believe that there was something there. Then it seems within like the last 10 years, it probably, I would have to say, really with the onslaught of some of the claims coming forth on Facebook, it really started. We really started to see a divisiveness in the community, and I have an open mind.
With that said, Matt, and you bring up a really good point. This does not mean that one creature may be similar to another creature of an extraterrestrial origin, only because of the fact that it seems that, and I brought this up in the past, a head that sits on the shoulders with two appendage arms with opposable thumbs and a thorax and legs. It may be the perfect design, and therefore it was created that way to bring another species from someplace else to mimic something that is already an indigenous creature here. So there could be two different things that we're experiencing, but yet it seems like the argument is it's either one or the other. It could be two different things altogether. And I've always had that argument with myself going, with the flap that happened in Pennsylvania with this red sphere that Stan Gordon reported that landed on the farm that was bigger than a farmhouse, itself. And these two Bigfoot-like creatures came out. And, George fired 2 tracer rounds over it. If you don't know that story, it's fascinating within itself. But these could be similar looking creatures, but yet two entirely different type of creatures altogether, not to be confused as one.
So you're saying that just because you could have different scenarios going on at the same time, and they don't have to be related at all. What do they call that? Correlation, not causation, right? Or something like not causation.
Right.
And that's a potentiality too. Like we have to, acknowledge. But when you look at this, just by the sheer amount of dates, right? I hate when that happens. So many of these accounts happened as we start going through August of 73. Like so much of this is occurring. And when some of it coming from newspaper articles, right? But also I'm just trying to find some of, once again, here's the rotten eggs, smelling Bigfoot sighting on a golf course. This again, people start talking to the state police at the end of August. August 25th, 1973. That's the story where a woman in a trailer court saw a huge black creature around 7 feet tall rip open an electrical box attached to a trailer. And as the woman screamed, the creature fled and it left behind a 3-toed print. So I talked about that earlier. That happens right in the middle of all this. Right. Now you're talking about that really interesting, story as well with the, what happened. I think that happened. Was that the October 25th, 1973 North Union?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Now what he's talking about, folks, for those of you listening, a man and 2 boys saw a UFO land in a field. Upon investigating, they observed 2 tall, hairy bipedal creatures walking along a fence line. The creatures had matted, dirty brown hair, glowing green eyes, broad shoulders, and small necks. They walked stiff-legged, giving them an overall robot-like appearance. The man shot at the creatures, which caused the spherical UFO that had landed in the field to leave the area immediately. Although the witness felt he didn't miss, the shots had little effect on the strange creatures. They simply turned around and traversed their way back to the UFO along the fence line.
Right.
A luminescent ring on the ground remained where the UFO had once been. The witness left the area and returned later with a state trooper. Although the glowing ring near the ground was still visible, its intensity had diminished. Several hours later, the luminescent ring completely dissipated. So they're talking about this happening in 25th. Small Town Monsters does a great reenaction of this. Go ahead, Vince.
Right. No, when the state trooper arrived at the scene, he did make the specific statement that the glow on the ground was still bright enough to be able to read a newspaper by. And the first round that was shot at the creature was not shot at the creature to kill it. It was a tracer round. If you don't know what a tracer round is, it's a lit magnesium round to light up the area, and it was shot over the heads to try to intimidate these creatures to move away. But it was not shot at the creatures to kill them. And there were 2 of those tracer rounds that were fired. The 3rd round was fired at the creature because now they're being intimidated. And that's when these creatures turned around and walked away.
Yeah. I mean, and they do a great reenactment of it through the, animation in Small Town Monsters. What is it? Invasion on Chestnut Ridge? Is that where they tell the story in that one?
Yep.
And so go check that out. It's playing on the background, actually, on one of the monitors here in the back. Sorry, Seth and team, not copyright infringement. It's just thematic. In November of 73 in Fayette County, a man shot at supposed Bigfoot creature and it disappeared. He saw the same creature later and shot at the creature again. This time the creature grunted and cried. So you go from October to November, you get 2 Bigfoots getting shots taken at, which is interesting because, you add some clarity. When I read the report that was reported to an organization locally, it makes it sound as if he took shots at the Sasquatch creatures. You're saying tracers, you know what I mean? So there's differences in the stories that we're getting, and how they're portrayed, which is interesting. I mean, it doesn't mean anything, but it's just interesting how those reports are interpreted and put out there on the internet. I'm just going through here some more, just trying to see. Here we go. February 6, 1974, one of the strangest things happening. A woman heard a noise outside her trailer, went to the doorway with a 16-gauge shotgun, opened the door, and saw a 7-foot-tall ape-like creature in the doorway. She claims to have shot at the creature, and it disappeared into the flash of light. Her son, who lived nearby, went to the area to investigate and saw several hairy creatures there. He shot at them with a pistol. A large red light hovered over a wooden section about 500 yards away during the incident. So now take that February 6, 1974, partner that with the October 25th, 1973, some very similar incidents happening there. Now you go to, back to that. I thought you were going to say something, Matt. I'm sorry.
No, that's, yeah.
I apologize. A witness was watching television when he heard a noise on the back porch. When the witness went to the doorway to see out the back door, he saw a big, hairy thing standing on two legs looking through the screen door at him. The witness ran back to the living room and grabbed a loaded .22 caliber handgun. He then fired through the screen door at the creature, and the creature ran off screaming. A neighbor heard the shots and then the scream. At the time, he turned on all the lights in the house and outside, but could see nothing. The next day, they went to the area to see if they could see anything. No clear footprints were found, but you could see that something big had run through the grass. The creature had also run through a barbed wire fence that had the strength to keep a 1,500-pound bull from running through it.
Right.
Wow. A lot of
so around that same time, a group of young men were walking along the railroad tracks in the evening when they heard something running through the brush on the hillside above them. They look up to see a dark brown animal running on two legs across the top of the hollow above them. And that's kind of the last story I got around 1974 in that time. Anything you guys want to add to those? Because if you, for some reason in Southwest PA, they like to take shots at this damn thing.
Yeah, right.
Let's go ahead and
I can't say I blame them.
Well, Vance made a good point in the beginning, being that the Patterson-Gimlin film wasn't a huge thing and that Bigfoot as an animal wasn't considered a big thing to report or anything like that. The people outdoors may have saw it as an intrusive animal, not as much Bigfoot, like hey, that's kind of bear-like, but it's not a bear, but it's coming towards us, and they're already in the woods with guns to hunt something else. So like aggression's already up, and they're like fight or flight, and hey, I've got a rifle. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's the same group that you would look at today that might be in the woods or out there to commune with nature or to have a picnic or to, something like you forage for mushrooms. These guys were out there to hunt something else and ran into this thing. So that I think that their mindset was, yeah, why not? We'll see what it tastes like, Yeah.
Not a damn thing safe about any of these scenarios that happened here, gentlemen. Let me tell you, there should be some gun safety lessons. They probably weren't even wearing orange back then. That could be sent to these folks. You're just talking about open doors and pulling triggers. Like, I mean, I guess you didn't have to worry about the castle doctrine back then, but my God, these things are out there that, with all these Bigfoot shot, I'm surprised there's not been a body that turned up somewhere.
It's also a time differential because back then you didn't have the, security systems we have today. And you would call a police officer. If you got one, he could be 2 hours before he gets to you. So a lot of people are ready for home defense.
Apparently they have the best security systems in the world, Smith & Wesson and Remington.
Plus you're looking at the time variances, like a lot of, we were talking about how Soviet Union was considered the big red, scare and stuff like that. So they were already on edge of somebody coming to their house, to start trouble.
Yes, because that's exactly where it's going to happen with a Soviet invasion in the farmlands of Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
it's a big Russian foot at your door.
You got people now that are like, they coming for my gun.
Yeah, it's an entirely different culture and mindset at that time period. Now, again,
you're right.
I will mention there's no social media whatsoever. All you had was 3 or 4 channels on your television set. If you came across something happenstance that presented some information to you that you took an interest in, okay, you're going to take it to your local library. What's the local library have at that time? It did not have a whole lot. So the fear factor kind of raises the temperature quite a bit at that time. You're going to have home defense, especially in the areas in which we are talking about. you're going to have that home defense. And if something strange does happen, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're in the Cold War right now with Russia. Yeah, you're going to fire on something. And if something strange happens, you're going to report it. Yeah, I would be absolutely privileged to the fact of how many reports were not reported of being fired upon something that either disappeared. We get one or two of those reports, but I wonder how many cases actually happened that were not reported. That would be completely fascinating to what we're talking about right now.
You got to also look at the fact that this is the same. Yes, there's a difference in decades, but the fact that when they had the radio would tell them that aliens were coming and people were actually afraid it was going to happen. There was civil disobedience,
unrest,
there was civil unrest.
Right.
You're looking at the the end of the Vietnam War. You're looking at a lot of people that were scared and didn't believe that if they couldn't protect their family, kind of like gather around the family with a pocket full of shells. They believed if they couldn't protect the family, who could? So when somebody they didn't know hit the front door, they were ready. And sometimes they didn't think before they shot, because in a small town, you could kill a man and it was an accident by the time the Federals came,
Right. No, very true.
I can't maintain my composure. I'm sorry. Oh.
So anyways, while you do that, I'm going to talk about my theory, my Bigfoot UFO theory. And I've talked to you, Sean, about it, and I think we talked about it privately. So what the theory is people talk about UFOs and Bigfoot together, and they automatically associate that, okay, Bigfoot's coming, it must be an alien. The way I figured it is we have people that claim that they are abducted. So how many people are there in the world? 7 billion. So you have a small population of humanoid creatures that are maybe, I don't know, maybe anywhere from 1,500, individuals to, maybe 50,000 spread throughout North America. If UFOs are coming through to like abduct people and do their bad things, don't you think that there's only a smaller population, so you're going to see more UFOs trying to find these big hairy creatures that are out in the woods because there's so few of them.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, I think you make a good point on that, and it's something that you and I have talked about in the past, and I'm glad you brought it up, particularly in this show, because I believe there was also somebody who was abducted that reported seeing other animals and creatures that were also being held in the craft with them. And it makes sense that, if this being is native to our planet, the Sasquatch, right, that it would be one of those creatures that would potentially be of interest to our extraterrestrial visitors. I mean, I think it's safe for us to say now that we know we're being visited by beings from another planet, without being conspiracy theorists or crazy. But nonetheless, Matt, your point to me is valid and on point in that respect. But as we talked about, guys, for 50 years. 50 years ago, this became this flap, the hundreds of reports and witnesses that came forth and had these experiences in coinciding with one another. It can't go unnoticed and it can't go unremarked. And Stan Gordon, who's been on the forefront for that for a long time, Dr. Paul, who's been more behind the scenes, and the other researchers that investigated it at that time, they went through some strange shit. And they went through a very interesting time that I don't know if we'd ever experience in our heyday, and if we did, would it be as dramatic as it was back then? And I think there's something else to say for the fact that a lot of that activity has ceased. that you're not getting hundreds of reports like that happening. And Matt, that could be right back to the point you made earlier. It was the Cold War. We were experimenting with nuclear energy, and we know that that leaves isotopes and it leaves residue. And if that's something these things were looking forward to as a sign of what, maybe that's how they measure intelligent life. You know, Star Trek always used the, warp drive. Did they have the ability to, what if they're the extraterrestrial equivalent to that was nuclear, harnessing nuclear power? And again, that's a lot of, supposition.
Hyperbole. No, I get it. Right.
But I mean, it's the thought process, the logic that's there, right?
Right. Yep. I would say too that in this time frame of the early 1970s, the lack of technology which we have in our laps today, it brought a romanticism to it. If that makes any sense to anybody, you could only communicate through CB or ham radio, through a dial telephone. This is how you were communicating all your information of things that were just not explainable at the time. Very lack of technological communication at that time. And when Stan Gordon was compiling all this information, he's face to face with all the information that he needs to be given to present that information to the general public, because it wasn't a social media event at that time. He had to literally do face-to-face, do a report, get the emotion physically of what the witnesses experienced, and then transpons that upon all of us. It's a whole different environment today. And I'm wondering if the technology today is kind of, and excuse the term, but retarding the emotion of what is experienced today. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
To illustrate the point you're making, if you see that photograph of Stan up in the corner with all that electronics behind him, that's his radio communication center.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it took to communicate long distance. I remember my great grandmother having a CB set up like that in her house, and she'd be able to talk to people long distance with her. She had a mast antenna, and my great grandma loved her CB, man. She could talk to people everywhere. That's how you communicated. That was the social networking of the time. You had a handle. I remember my Paps was Muddy Buddy. And
the big money monster.
It was funny that you brought that up. It's, his was Muddy Buddy. And
wow, that's awesome.
But you also got to realize back in that day, it was the days of the newspaper and the barber shop and the beauty shop where people talked at the diners and stuff like that. And the thing is we didn't have we have the ability now to, if I want to say something, I can reach thousands of people within 5 minutes if I hit the right forums. They didn't have that back then. And if your story wasn't something that the editor wanted to hear, you were shut off.
Yeah, you were cut.
There's not this there's conspiracy theories and there's whatever, but you realize that if we were working on the days of the newspaper and the small town gossipers, you couldn't say a lot of the stuff that we say now because somebody in some room would go, "Stop listening to Baker." And then I would basically have been silenced.
I don't know if any of that. I don't know if that's much different today. We just have a lot more freedom with it.
Yeah. But I could find the worst thing is we've had this conversation a multitude of times. I could take a picture of the river, make a circle, and I could get 100 people to believe me I saw Nessie in the Susquehanna. And then those 100 could turn it into 1,000. In a small town, I could show somebody a picture with a circle, and they'd be like, "Go home, Baker. Get drunk."
Right.
Fair enough. And that's, the newspaper was how these stories were told. I can't tell you how many of these I was looking up tonight that were taken right from the newspaper. They weren't even necessarily investigated by the research organization, just put right out there. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I was going to say, if you came up with something like that, you would be shunned, from your community. But really, the only thing you had was church, bars, the diner, and really the newspaper, that was it. If you look at some of these old time newspapers, you'll actually see they'll actually have little gossip columns where they'll say Sean Forker left his house to go to Montoursville, on this day.
I did that.
It's just weird stuff that they would have. But if something came up that, and I always look for, especially in the local papers where I live, for any sort of, the wild man, the gorilla, or there's been actually a lot of mountain lion sightings. So I look for those, and every so often you'll get something like that, but it'll be all the way, on the third page at the bottom column. And it's something that the editors didn't want to put on their front page, that,
right.
There was something weird in the woods.
Yeah, they didn't want to turn it into a tabloid newspaper. No, I
Correct.
get it. Right.
Just tabloid column.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. No, fascinating. Guys, I'd also be remiss to say we did get a phone call last night. I was talking to you guys about it from Miss Grady out in Luzerne County, who had a very interesting tidbit to share with us, that while doing renovations in homes, he came across a wood carving in one of the barns from 1802 of a large hairy figure carved in the barn. So it was pretty interesting. Wow. And some interesting
cool
encounters he had out that way. He's going to stay in touch with us, but I talked to him for over a half an hour last night about interesting things happened in Luzerne County. So more to come from Grady.
Fingers crossed. That'll
folks,
be awesome.
You too can report your information to us, info@sasquatchexperience.com. Hit us up on our social media, Sasquatch Experience on Facebook, Instagram, Squatch EXP. On X, I guess it's not Twitter anymore. I got to fix that graphic. And at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a ticker. You can report your sighting to us at 570-940-9411 if you'd like to call and leave a number or leave a message on our studio number. We'll get back to
anonymity is a guarantee.
Yes, we will keep you confidential. 570-940-9411. Also, if you're so inclined, you can continue supporting Sasquatch Experience through Patreon, patreon.com/Sasquatch Experience, starting for as little as, guys, how much?
I believe it's $2
a month. Not a bad deal. Can't get that a cup of coffee a day for $2.
Right.
And support us, get ad-free shows, except for whatever Vance puts in the news, because he works hard on that, and I ain't cutting it out. So almost ad-free shows. Everything else is, on us. So it's very distraction-free unless you find our voices so alluring. It's quite distracting. Anyhow, folks, we want to thank you for tuning in. Good show tonight. Had some fun. A lot. This only scratched the surface again of these topics. I feel like an hour is just not enough.
No kidding. It's not.
It's not. But that's why we have more episodes and we can come back and revisit this topic. I'm Sean Forker. That's James Baker, Matt Arner, Vance Nesbitt, Henry May, who's been on and off. We hope he's okay with the bad weather. And if Henry was here, what would he say, Vance?
Y'all be good or be good at it.
All right, folks. We'll see you next week. Our episode's going to be The Muddy Monster. So enjoy your Thanksgiving, folks. Happy Thanksgiving from us at the Sasquatch Experience.
Turkey Testicle Festival.
Woohoo!
Yum, yum.
Butterball, doesn't it? And we'll see you. We'll see you down the road. Keep on
later.
You've been listening to Sasquatch Experience. Please rate and review wherever this podcast is consumed. To share your experience, visit us on Facebook or email us, squatchexperience@gmail.com. Keep on squatching.